So thanks a lot for coming on the show. It's been a privilege to have you on the show, and it's been my I've been thinking of inviting you. Firstly, I thought whether sir will accept my invite or not, but then later I was like, let me check it out. And once you have put some query and I answered it, and then we started the conversation. Then I was like, yeah, now I got the connection. Let's talk with sir. So that is how I invited you, and thanks a lot for coming. And so you've been my ideal for the reason I started podcast is because of you. I mean, I went through your podcast, the advertising is there, and that is something which I want. If out of some ideas, let's suppose I'm working on some project or something comes up to mind, I want to refine my knowledge on it. I'll just go through his podcast and I'll listen to the whole show, and next I'll go and talk with my friends. This is this is that, this is that. So a lot of my management knowledge has also come from your podcast. Thanks a lot for doing this, sir. So to start off with, I want to know, like, born in Kakinada, then you moved out to Bangalore, and from Bangalore you have done your engineering, and later engineering you worked for Spinoff, and from Spinoff later you thought like, okay, let's do mass comm at Symbiosis, and Symbiosis later after you went on to work with MTV, and from there you started the creative agency it's one of the best creative agencies in the country, the Glitch. So to start off, I want to know, like, how did an entrepreneur got into content creation? And as of now, you have 3 podcasts which are regarded as the smartest in the country.
So I've always wanted to create content. I've realized. Firstly, thank you for lovely introduction. You actually done a nice run through of everything that I've done. What I like to do is talk to people who listen to the podcast. So I also feel that whenever I see that it's given value to anybody, I always feel like it's you're doing some work that matters. So how did I end up doing content creation? I've always wanted to create content. I feel that in many ways, when I was growing up, even back in Kakinada, even during my time in Bangalore, even when I was studying mass comm in Pune, the idea was always to create content at some level. I think I realized it much later. I realized it by the time I got to Pune post engineering, when I realized I didn't want to do engineering. Till engineering, I wanted to code. For me, coding was a way to create content. So even if I had to code something in school, I would try and add a few extra things into any program I would write. Right, so always try to make it a little more entertaining, add a little bit more to that. So that is always something I've wanted to do. But I feel that especially in the last many years, it's become easier to create content. It's more accessible, right, in many ways.
The internet.
No, exactly. Right. You can pick up a phone and do everything you need to do. You don't need anything else right now. And I think that's the main thing that's really changed. It made it more accessible for someone who has a profession. Like for me, I became an entrepreneur, weirdly enough, because we wanted to do stuff on the internet. Me and Rohit, my co-founder, we were in Channel V. We'd both worked in music television for a while. I did MTV and then Channel V, and then we both quit together. The idea was simply that we want to create interesting content on the web. And we set out to do that. And see, we had our journey over the last 12 years. But over that last 12 years, I've seen that the ability to create really good content doesn't have a barrier anymore. It had a barrier of, okay, do you have access to the right kind of equipment? Do you have access to softwares? All these things are very expensive. Like even 10 years ago, a lot of this stuff would not be accessible to most people.
Okay. Yes, sir.
But now anybody can sit wherever they are and just plug and play and create a podcast, create a YouTube channel, create reels on an Instagram, even write a newsletter that goes to thousands of people, right? So I suddenly felt like there was a bug to do that, and I kind of fell into it. Advertising that happened because I was asked if I wanted to host a podcast, and I was not even a podcast listener. And I started hosting it, and I realized that it brought me back to my first love. My first love has always been conversations, right? I like talking to people.
Yes,
I like talking to people across the board. Since I was a kid who would run around if I was on a train with my parents, I would go and talk to random people and tell them what happened in our house that day and ask them about what happened in there. So I think I was a podcaster since I was a kid. Just realized much later in life, but podcasting also showed me that I could create so much and I could learn so much, right? My idea has always been that how can I learn something new with every episode that somebody else can also learn from? I go in with the learner's mindset. I never try to go in with an expert's mindset for that primary reason that it needs to be from a learning point of view. And that's why I've been able to do all of that. As I've learned more, I wanted to give a certain perspective also, which is why Think Fast, the other podcast, happened, because there are some aspects of business and marketing and media that I have a perspective on. So through Think Fast, I give a perspective on it. And the Varun Duggirala show, which is an entirely different side, it came across because There are many other things I'm interested in, which I actually learn a lot about. I learn a lot about how you can perform better as human beings, how you can have a better mindset, how you can build systems and processes, and almost try to like focus yourself on performing better and being. In many ways, performance doesn't only have to be that okay, you're hustling and you're doing more, but how can you do that to be happier in life? So I like to learn all of that. So which is why the Varun Duggirala show happened. So yeah, so every time I find a need to share something I'm learning, I think I come up with a new podcast or some content idea. But my idea is simply that I'm sharing what I'm learning. I'm not an expert.
I mean, sir, I know you. Idealize you a lot. While in college, I used to listen to Alan Watts, like just when I'm feeling down or when I need a fresh perspective on something. I used to listen to Alan Watts. Now that when I got hooked to your show, every night, let's suppose I'm sort of some idea or I have some presentation to do, or I'm going to a new place where a bunch of founders are meeting. So what I'll do is like let's suppose I want to talk about content. So I'll go to your podcast. Advertising is that, comma, content. Let's suppose I want to talk on branding. I'll go to YouTube, and then advertising is that, comma, marketing. So your podcast is regarded as one of the smartest podcast in the country. And apart from that, you have a TED talk on we are conversations. So I want to hear from you, like how this knack for building conversation has started right from your. Is it right from your college days, or did you build it in your schooling?
So I was a conversational kid when I was very young. I somewhere lost it, I would say around 10th standard onwards, because I got nervous. You feel like I also left Kakinada and went to Bangalore after my 10th. That obviously made me suddenly go from what was a town to a city, and suddenly everybody seemed smarter, everybody seemed to know more. And you suddenly feel like you'd rather stand in the background. So my conversations went down, I would say, my years in Bangalore. I rediscovered them over time, as I moved to Bombay, as I did a lot more work here, built Glitch up. I think I rediscovered all of that. But actually, the podcast made me realize, because I actually spent time in understanding how I can actually have a better conversation with my guests. Right, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I study how good hosts, kind of work. I see the terms they use. I see how they take it from an answer to the next question. I listen to interviews of podcasters, so understanding that a lot more. So I've actually spent time on the craft a little bit, and what I've actually realized is there's some very basic things which we don't often think about, right? We always think about, okay, well, how smart can my question be? Yes. But what I feel most times we should actually do, if we listen well enough, we'll find the next question in the answer the other person's giving. So that does two things. One is it makes you ask the right question. Secondly, it makes the other person feel more comfortable, because they feel like, oh, someone's listening to me. If they're listening to me, the other person more comfortable. So that's what good conversations about. Conversations are about just finding that flow between two or three people are saying, okay, I'm seeing something, you found something in what I've said, and ask me my next question, or given your point of view. And so it's that fluidity that you should actually play along. And more than anything else, it's about listening. It's about really listening and understanding what people's perspectives are. And the more you open yourself up to that, you will learn so much. I feel like conversations teach me more than anything else in life. I often say that I didn't learn enough from college, but I learned enough from post-college conversation.
With it, sir, talking about conversations and making a connection, as a marketer, over the times where consumer behaviors are changing, so how you build a connection between consumer and brand? So now the popular means of communication, advertising, is branded content. So you work with Netflix, Sacred Games. In your talks with Tanmay Bhatt, you mentioned this, like how you have given that creative space to Divine to come up with that song. And I want to learn from, I want to understand your take on branded content and the future of advertising.
I think fundamentally advertising and marketing has changed in a few ways. I think there's a lot of that stuff that's happened in the last 2 years, but I think a lot of it has been happening over the last, like, let's say 7-8 years. One is that if you looked at advertising and marketing before, it was supremely planned, and it had very less moving parts. So you'd have an agency that controlled the narrative. You'd have people in the marketing team across, a brand, and you would do, let's say, a few print pieces. You would do a couple of, let's say, television commercials in a year. But today, each brand is creating thousands of pieces of content in a day. What's also happened is marketing would never really hit that last point of sale. Like, marketing would push you till the point of sale, but marketing never made you purchase. The online system has changed that. Is that performance coming in has changed. So marketing inherently now is actually helping drive actual business. Before it did that as well, but I think now it does it in more like actual quantifiable terms. I think that's one thing which is changed. But more than anything else, we've always had non-living media channels, in the sense that you have TV, print, etc. Now every creator, every influencer is a media network to themselves, right? So what's happened is, especially last 2 years, brands realized when there was no opportunities to do more things on traditional platforms, every creator has a set of audience who come to them for a certain kind of for certain kind of content. Now, if a brand can no longer say, this is what I'm making, you just put it where your channel is, like how you do it on television. They have to meet the creator halfway, saying, okay, we need to make this seem organic enough, or rather seamless enough, that it doesn't seem like it's an odd addition to what the creator is making. So it's no longer about 100% brand mandate and a creative is being made. It's about 50% brand mandate and 50% what the creator's channel really stands for, what their content stands for. And that's also changed how brands think about how they're outside. Like, how you create content is no longer, I don't think it's branded content anymore. Everybody just creating content. Brands are a part of it. And I think that's the inherent change that's really happened. And that can only happen if you let the creator take certain liberties. And you can define what they can't take liberties on. I think that's important to do. Because you shouldn't go the opposite direction also.
Yes.
You shouldn't say, take my product, do whatever you want, right? That's also a bad thing to do. Set a few rules. Don't be supremely rigid about it. Set a few, boundaries there, and let them do their thing. Because in many ways, if you are going to a creator or an influencer, you're going to them because whatever they're doing is getting an audience, and you want a part of that audience. So that's, for me, performance, and this are two fundamental changes. The third thing is, because of the high volume of content that people are consuming, and brands have to be a part of it, brands are almost becoming like creators and publishers themselves. So in a sense, why would you go follow a brand's account on a YouTube, on a social, or Instagram, or anywhere else? You won't just go there if a brand's only selling you stuff. You'll go there if a brand actually giving you some value. So there are two kinds of values. Are they giving you great value in terms of a good deal? Are they giving you great value in terms of actual content that connects with your values? And I think that you have to give one of those two things. You can't just be selling them something in the normal way you would sell it, because people don't want to follow that anymore. And a great example of that, if you look at a few examples, right, we spoke about Netflix earlier. Netflix online is a fan of content. If you look at it, you can follow their content without even subscribing to Netflix, and you'll still have entertainment value. You still have a lot of things there. If you look at something like a Tinder online, Tinder again, it's entirely about love. You will follow their content for the fun of it. A Zomato, a Swiggy, a Dunzo, all of them have a lot of entertainment value to their content. Like Zomato, I think, makes some of the best memes, right? Akshar Pathak is sitting there doing some phenomenal work. And I think that's what the learning is. It's saying a brand has to almost put a creator's mindset on in terms of what they're putting out there. And that's also then changed. You're not only doing brand speak, you are also having fun. You're picking up topical stuff. I know people who are meme creators who are working for brands today, because that's what brands are finding a better way to communicate with a large part of the audience. And I think that's really where the world is going. You have brands behaving like creators or publishers. You have creators almost being media channels, but brands have to meet them halfway. And performance really drives everything. I think performance is still a core part of holding the brand's marketing together.
And sir, and to follow with that, like entertainment and value creation. So I like in your conversation with Tanmay, but you, in one of your podcasts, not with Tanmay, but one of a conversation, you talk about, you say that like credit campaigns, like most of the agencies hate it because वहाँ पे क्या बेच रहे हो, brand कहाँ है? They're just like Rahul Dravid is coming out and doing something, and that got virality. So I want to know, like, what is the value of humor in branding, and like how this changes like the voice of marketing, like humanizing the market.
My perspective on the credit campaign, I think it's a good place to start, right? Is that from what I've gathered and from what I've seen just from messaging, I've not had a conversation with anyone from their team, but it's very apparent. Also, I've spoken to like Bopana, who's worked on the scripts of all the films, etc. What they really wanted to do was make cred top of mind. So everybody in the country knows that there is something called cred because of the content that's happened. And if you look at the content Tanmay, Bopana, etc. created, it is entirely based off how YouTube videos work. You have something at the beginning, it's a familiar format. A lot of the things you watch on YouTube, watch on Reels, etc. It's a familiar format. There is something coming, so you'll watch the whole thing. You're waiting for that twist in the end. While you're waiting for the twist, you're giving certain level of information there. Now, even if people believe that, okay, most people don't hear the initial part where Jim Sarab is talking, but because of him talking that way, it is stuck in our heads. Like in many ways, if you ask me to say what Jim Sarab says, I can actually say what he says because I've seen it so many times. He says the same thing in many ways. So I feel for a brand, defining what you're doing a campaign for is more important than ever in today's world, because you can do so many things. The opportunity for a brand to do things that, like, imagine this, right? You can have, like, you can do stuff with podcasts, you can do stuff with reels, you can do stuff with creators on multiple platforms, even when you're doing like live experiences. Now you go on virtual, you go on, like, I'm not even talking about metaverse, that's a whole different problem altogether. But what you have to define is, what do you want out of this? And I think that's really important. And every campaign, if you define that out really well, that inherently then decides what you do. What happens when you look at any of these films from a traditional advertising lens? You will try to judge it basis how all ads were always made, because all ads were always made saying you will have a story, you'll have a product window in the end. The cred ad starts with the product window in the beginning.
Yeah.
If you look at a lot of these pieces, and that's changed because the audience has changed, how they consume content has changed, the requirement and the core reason why they did that campaign also changed. So I think that's the way to look at it. Look at it saying, if you don't put it on paper and do it for fun, that's a different problem altogether. But I think inherently, as a brand today, you can define what you want to achieve out of anything you do, and you can achieve that basis really reach, like almost like changing around how advertising is even done. I think that's the way to do it.
It's an interesting perspective, sir. I mean, one of my personal questions is, like, you are one of our angel investors in Growth School, and like in the recent times, like I read an article which says like how EdTech is like coming at an intersection of the creators economy and cohort-based courses. So I want to understand, like, since you're an angel investor and heavily involved with Vibox, so I want to understand, what is your take on cohort-based courses, and what is it going to change the landscape of education?
So I'm not heavily involved. I've invested, but I'm also working on a course for them, which is why I know how they function. I'm actually working on, we're just going to announce a podcasting course for them.
Yes.
Which I'm going to be doing. So one second, is my daughter's crying coming into the mic? It's fine.
Yes.
She's throwing a tantrum outside, sorry. So the whole piece with, sorry, I've lost my, So here's the thing, right? If you look at a creator today, how does a creator make money was always initially, if you look at the initial part, only make it through brand deals, ads, placements, etc. But the problem is that was never large amounts of money unless you're a massive creator, right? You have to be at a large scale to do that. So, but today a creator, and why it become an economy, that's for a few reasons. You can make money through digital products and physical products.
Yes.
In most cases, what has become the easiest digital product to create, if you can do it well, is to build a course, build a workshop, do a course. A lot of them are live. Some of them are, kind of build a recording plus, a mixture of things. And the cohort piece has actually scaled up a lot in my, if you look at my perception, is because we want to learn together. The one thing which you should never take away from traditional education is the fact that we learn well together. Like, you don't want to only learn individually. I mean, honestly, that's the only thing I actually enjoyed from college. In many ways, is the people who were around me, right? You learned more from them.
That is the reason why we go to college. Like,
Exactly. So keep that part. The rest of it, the classes, everything else can be recorded. You watch it at your own timelines. I think that's really what's interesting. And because Vaibhav's done this really well with his own courses over time, right? He's been doing the LinkedIn workshop, the growth hacking workshops for a long time, and run like massive, like I've seen like 1,000-member cohorts, if not larger. And I keep telling him, how does he even do such large cohorts? But I think that's what he's taken, that learning, and built it into a platform. And you will see there are a lot of these happening, right? You have like companies like Tag Mango, for instance, who are focusing on workshops, but also giving really mid-level creators a way to monetize, right? I know someone who's a publishing editor in a publishing house, and she's been doing workshops on how do you get your first book published? And she's gotten people to sign up for that. There are people doing psychology and cooking workshops. And so in that sense, a creator today can say, oh, you consume my content because you like something about this. Let me teach you how I do this. And people will pay for that so they can make money. The other side is physical products. Like tomorrow like everybody's launching merch, for instance, right? Bionic just launched his entire clothing brand. You'll have people who will launch products. So the physical and digital product piece is actually what's going to be interesting. And so over time, this will make them into entrepreneurs and creators. A great example is someone like Nasir Yasin as Nas Daily.
Nas Academy.
Right. So what he's been doing now, and I spoke to him on a panel on a fireside chat I did for someone, and what he said is all creators are entrepreneurs. It's just that they're entrepreneurs who understand how to build their own media as well. And I think that's a great way to define where this is going. So either you're an artist where you are a creator, you're building almost a bank of saying, okay, I can act, I can direct, I can run a show, and you're going towards that, or you're becoming an entrepreneur just using your content creation to get ways to monetize. So why a cohort-based course is great is because it takes away the stuff we don't want about with traditional education, which is like you have to go to one place, sit in that class, do all of that stuff.
3 years.
It lets you keep the fact that you have that same group of people. And so I feel it's the best of both worlds.
Talking about this community, right? Like I mean, most of the people say that 21st century is all about community. But I mean, there are few people who say that. I mean, in conversation with few people, I learned that like the angel investors or the venture capitalists are more invested in products, not the creators. So I want to learn from you your understanding. You say that we have Maven. Like now, NAS has come up with NAS Academy. So do you think the people who are coming forward, the Sequoia Capital or anything, who are coming forward and investing, are they investing in the creator or in the product?
I think a bit of both, to be honest. You can't just be one or the other. I think if you look at some of the best products in the world, it's also because they've been creatively packaged, been put together, right? And I think it's important. If you talk to some of the best investors, and so my angel investing has been very like, I do it in a stealth format. I never really talk too much about it because I just do it with people I've spoken to, interacted with. And the best angel investors or the best VCs I've spoken with have always said one thing, is that if they look at, okay, is this person building towards solving a problem? Is the problem large enough that it can scale? And most importantly, is the person investable? Like oftentimes you'll find a founder who's doing something and you might not think the company or the idea is great, but the person might be super impressive and smart. So there are some investments like I've done where I find the founder to be, okay, this person I know will do something. I'd rather invest in them now. And that's actually worked out really well as well. So I feel that's the way to look at it. Is saying, are they really solving a problem, or have they found an interesting gap there? But more from what will people invest in? I think every firm has a set of focus areas of what they're good at, because oftentimes, even as a company, if you're going for investment, I don't think anybody is going anymore asking only for money. They want to know strategically what more you can give them, right? Are you giving them a larger contact base? Are you helping them kind of, refine their backend, etc., all that stuff? So there's some extra value add that comes with every single firm you get investment from, or every person you get from. I mean, especially from an individual perspective, right? For me, the thing is that there are a few sides which I understand really well, be it the marketing aspect. The creator economy is something which I'm extremely bullish on. So I have a lot more info on that part. And I generally do, thanks to the podcast, thanks to everything else, kind of know people so I can connect one to the other. And so that's why I've ended up investing in places where I know I can add more value apart from money, because it's not like I'm putting lots of money in any of them. But I think that's the way all of them are looking at it. They're saying, okay, what is really going to grow? And the creator economy, ever since the economy tag came in, has also brought about the fact that if you are a creator or a creative in that sense, you are innately being able to build an entire economy under you. You're being able to build an entire business under you. Yeah. And that's made it very interesting. But I think it's still early in people investing in this space. But if you look at what's happening in the US versus here, it's only going to...
I mean, I've been one of a student of it. I took LinkedIn classes from Vibo. So, and his classes were like, when I jumped to it, as you said, like it was more than 500 students. I was shocked, like, kahan se la rahe ho aap? And then, sir, next question coming to leadership. See, I see a lot of people. I see Vibo. I see a lot of people, Tanmay or anyone like. But you, sir, you are kind of inspiration for me, because your life is an ideal for a visionary leader. Because you have your own show, you have your own company, you are a co-founder at Glitch, one of the best agencies, creative agencies in the country. You take out time to write articles on Substack. You have your podcast. You take out time to do that, and you have your family time. And once like I messaged you on Instagram, and you were like, can we do this later because I'm in a wedding? So I see your newsfeed. When I see your newsfeed, you have a proper family time. You have a proper allocation of social, professional, and personal life. So I want to learn from you, like as a leader. So how do you get this sorted up? The whole equation of like work and life balance.
So while it's not as clear cut structured as it sometimes seems, I oftentimes running between things, and I've had to reschedule this
Yes, yes.
recording as well. So that's generally the chaos of life is always there. I just like to break life up into larger chunks. I think there's work, life, and self, and we often ignore the self. I think the self is very important. There are certain periods I know that I'm really required for work at Glitch, for stuff that's required around that. So that's blocked out, right? And I've realized that working by a calendar really helps. But I also don't overpack my calendar. My calendar is never back to back, meetings. And also I have the luxury of doing that because, once you come to a certain level of leadership, you can do it. Not everybody has the luxury of it. So I think that's one aspect. But what I also do is I make sure there's enough time with family. And that doesn't, I don't believe that family time has to be, you have like half a day blocked off and all that stuff, right? I make sure that I'm there when I'm really required to be there. Like, for instance, our daughter goes to school. I mean, we were doing it online for a year and a half. She's finally started going to school now. But for me, the fact that I'm the person who wakes her up in the morning, gets her ready for school, is something I don't want to give up for anything else. So that's like that part of time is blocked. Nothing else comes into that. Similarly, in the evenings, we all spend time together before, before puja and my daughter would kind of sleep. And that's again blocked off. I don't want to compromise on that. Occasionally, very, very rarely do I compromise on that time. But the one thing which really helps me kind of find balance is that I schedule time for myself. So early in the morning for about half an hour, and I wake up reasonably early, like 6ish is when I wake up. And late at night, which is about at least an hour at night, I'm spending time with myself. I'm reading a book. Yeah, in the mornings I journal. I listen to a podcast, I watch a show. I mean, it's not like I'm only doing serious things, right? I'm also having watching random stuff. I'm going through YouTube and watching random tech unboxing videos. I do all of those things. But it's important to schedule time with yourself, hopefully without a screen. And I think that really helps. It also gives you some time. Like I make sure I work out every single day. And some of those. So I schedule that into it and leave that flexible. So treat your day like the different chunks, work, life, and self. But make sure you don't compromise on self and life, because no matter how much you might want to do at work, if you don't look after life and self, what are you doing it for? And you might be the most successful person professionally, but if you're not happy with self and life, then you won't be happy in general. Like even the podcast, I do 3 podcasts, but the time is scheduled very efficiently, right? Thankfully, Advertising is that has a producer. I do it with IBM. So it's 1 hour a week. I just need to make sure that I'm prepped for the recording. I have 1 hour I'm recording. Sometimes I do 2 hours if you want to bank an episode, but that's 2 hours in a week. Think Fast happens late in the evening on Thursdays. So that's again 1.5 hours on a Thursday evening. Only time when I go a little later into the evening for a recording or anything else. And the Varun Duggirala show I record on a Sunday evening for an hour. So if you look at it technically, it's about 3.5, 4 hours in a week, which is, once you put it that way, it doesn't feel like it's such a large amount of time. Also because I've built the shows in such way. Like Varun Duggirala show is entirely done by me. I don't have a team on it. I'm finally getting some people to work on me. But it's produced by me entirely because I'm doing one take and I'm uploading it off Anchor and it's gone live. Right? I'm not spending time on editing and doing all
on production and stuff.
Yeah, build a format that you can fit into your life. I think often we try to do more things which take too much time. And in the middle of all of this, I wrote a book, right? I spent the last, from March to October last year, I sat and wrote a book. How I did that was basically my morning time for myself. I would wake up early, spend an hour in the morning working on the book. 3 days a week, 4 days a week. I did that over those many months, with many days when I didn't write as well. So when you look at life in this small chunk, 15 minutes, 1 hour, half an hour, you suddenly realize you have a lot of time. But there's some things I don't do. I don't watch as many shows as I would like to. I don't read as many books as I really want to. I have like a stack of 100 books next to me, and I keep buying more and more books, and I'm very behind on my schedule of that. But that's the best way to do it. Manage your time in chunks?
But sir, I was appalled by like, see, you're not a normal guy. You have one of the best agencies. You are the co-founder. You might have like 100 employees under you, and then you have your podcast. You have your clients. You have a lot to manage. But then I was like, how is he able to accomplish so much in like 24 hours? Like the same which we go through. I mean, sometimes like I go through people like who have 50 employees or 20 employees, and they don't have like, whenever I call, like, can I call you back? Can I reschedule this? Can I do that? But you, like, I called you for a podcast being such a guy who has worked with big brands like Nike, Nokia, Netflix. You gave time. That is something very, awe for me.
Should add a point onto that one. The only reason I can do that is because Glitch has now reached a point in scale where we have a very strong leadership team. I don't look after the business aspect. I look after one part, which is the production aspect. So that allows me the flexibility of time to do this. If I was handling clients, I don't know if I would have been able to do so many things. I thankfully don't handle as many clients as I used to, which is also like, I think, perks of doing this long enough and building a company. So I think that's one, like, I've given disclaimer there. That's one of the reasons I can do it. We have a fabulous leadership team. They literally run the agency the way it needs to be run. And it's also a good feeling when you build something, but you also have people who are really running it and making it their own. So
I went through a website. I know I showed someone like, hey, check out this. So this is Varun Duggirala, and this is his podcast. And I showed the website. From the website itself, they're like much up. They were like so in awe of you. Like, the website itself tell how creative they are. And forget about the work. We went to your Instagram. We saw your post, and then later website. So that communicates to you, like, what kind of thought process the people who work there have. So, sir, next question is around your book. So, one of the things, like most of the things in life, if something is new is given to us, we feel like, I haven't prepared to it. Like, we are never 100% ready for anything when you're short of some of the other information. So, your book, your title, when I saw the title, I was like, I shared on my WhatsApp, and a lot of people are like, this is something which I want to read. So, I want to know about the title of the book and what is this going to be about.
So the book's called Everything is Out of Syllabus, right? The idea was simply this. I remember when I was discussing it with the guys at Penguin when we were discussing the book, even like, I think early last year. And I said that there are many things in life which you can never be taught. You only learn them as things happen to you.
Cool.
And if you break that down, there's inherently 5 things that you are never taught that you learn. You never taught how to start things. Like, how everyone says, okay, go ahead and do this, but how do you start? Like, how do you, from like getting into an internship, how do you kind of deal with that first period? From like, getting onto stage, talking to people, so many things, right? We don't know how to start. We secondly never really taught how to make choices. We have every second we are making choices in our lives. How do we make the right choices? Like, or rather, how can we learn to make choices better for ourselves? Third thing is, how can you learn? I think learning has I think it's gotten better. It had a bad reputation because learning was equal to education in many ways before. I think they're very different things today. So how do you learn better? How can you actually learn in a way that enriches you in so many ways? Then the last 2 parts are, how do you connect with other people? Because as humans, we do have to connect with other people. We have to we are social beings, and that's a strong part of it. And how do you also like reflect within yourself? We don't spend enough time. We never taught how to talk to ourselves, how to reflect within ourselves, right? Something which I've realized in the last almost 2-3 years, not longer than that, about how to really have that conversation with myself. So it's about 26 different lessons broken into these 5 sections. It's not all. What I didn't want to do with the book is to say, oh, I know the answers to all of these things. I don't know the answers to all of these things, but I've consumed a lot of information around these things. So there are some instances from my life. There are some instances I've pulled out from a lot of stuff which I have consumed. I've referenced a lot. I actually plan to make an entire list of all the books which I've referenced, all the places I've gotten this from. So people can actually even get those, right? I think you learn a lot by consuming all of that as well. So to almost give everybody a way to build your own instruction manual in life. Saying, if you had a manual for your life, what all would you put in it? And oftentimes we don't get a manual when we start off. No, you're just born, like you figure things out. So that's the idea. It's a light read. It's not a big book, but I think it has enough pieces in there that will give you some insight to make some decisions, to also look at how you can do each of these things better. I also wrote it for what would I have wanted to read when I was 21. And I thought this is what I would have wanted. I was like, I wish I had some sort of at least an understanding of these things when I was 21. So that's who I wrote it for. but I think it applies for people across the board. Like I've sent it to people across ages, a few of them, and that's what they've largely said, that everybody found something or rather a bunch of things in that which they kind of took learning from.
Coming to learnings, I see, I mean, from a personal life, like you have worked at many of the companies. Let's suppose you said like right after engineering, you work for Smirnoff.
Technically, I didn't work for Smirnoff. I was working for an events company and we were selling a party card that was sponsored by Smirnoff. So it was called the Smirnoff party card. So I was a promoter. I was an event promoter of sorts. I would sell that for Smirnoff. Then I was doing some stuff for Jack Daniel's whiskey as well. So I used to do a lot of liquor promoter work out of engineering.
From there, you went on to do your mass comm from Symbiosis, and after that, you worked with MTV. And a month into it, then you co-founded a creative agency. So in this journey, like a lot of people say, when I say to my mom, like I want to start something of my own, my mom says like, "Teri umar kya hai, and what is your experience? How much is your experience? How much you have learned?" So, sir. Personally, this is on a personal level. I want to understand, like you have short spans of experience, and from that experience, you have started something which has grown so big that you are now a partner of a WPPP. I mean, WPPP has bought your agency. So I want to understand, like how you have able to, like, I mean, in professional life, go so fast, like accomplish so many things in a short span.
My career's had an interesting journey, right? I'll fast forward beyond not the post engineering stuff, but when I first came to Bombay, I came to intern at MTV. I worked at MTV for 4 months. Worked on all the show as an intern. Tried to work on as many shows as possible. This is midway through college. Then came back and worked with them. Worked on one show for them, and then jumped to Channel V. I also worked at Channel V for 3 years, but it just felt like a long time. Because I did a lot of shows then. So I was doing a lot of reality TV direction, etc., all that stuff. Rohit, my co-founder, also was in Channel V the entire time, was directing a lot of promos and ads for them. When we quit, we wanted to do something online. And our reasoning was that what's the worst that can happen? Because I think that's an important insight. Oftentimes, if you are older, you have a lot more things to think about. You have to think about, let's say we have a family, which means that even if like, I know, there's a certain amount of money you want to put aside, if you have kids, if you have responsibilities, we literally had to pay for ourselves. We didn't have to give money back to family. We didn't have to do any of those things. We had to just pay for ourselves. And we said, okay, we have a little money saved up from what work we've done. Let's try this out. What's the worst that will happen? We'll go look for a job. We didn't really have a business plan, but this what's the worst that can happen is where we start. It also made us feel a little easier because we're like, worst case, we go look for a job. It felt like we would get some work because we had done some, and we also knew people, and some of these channel people would hire us back because we also worked really hard, did a good job in that 3-4 year period. So when we started Glitch, we didn't even know what it was. We said, let's go try doing something. I knew how to produce. Rohit knew how to direct. I said, okay, you direct, I'll produce. We both knew how to edit. So which means we didn't really have to hire too many external people initially. And so we started off that way. And I think we started at the right time and with the right mindset. So every year, I would say the Glitch has been different every year of its functioning. I would say at least for the first 6-7 years, because we started off as a production house. Then by year 2, year 3, we were doing innovations for brands. So we were saying, okay, can we shoot something, but also make it interactive online? And we were doing that primarily because we were excited by it. We said, okay, that's really fun to do. Let's try it out. So we would like do random stuff by adding tech to content. And at some point, a brand asked us, can you also do strategy and handle social and work on creative? And we said, okay, let's try doing that as well. And so that's how we became an agency. We became agency because we saw opportunity. And when we saw an opportunity, we said, how do we build that? And we built it how we thought it made sense to build it. We didn't really have, legacy understanding. So we built it like by practically looking at it. How do we do this? So if you had to do a shoot and someone said, I do 20 videos in a day, we said, okay, how do we do 20 videos in a day? If somebody had experience, they would say, no, it's impossible to do it. You can only do 2 videos in a day, right? We didn't know any better. So let's see how we can do it. And that's it. So we used to have a standing joke that we would always say yes to something and then figure out how to do it. For the first 3-4 years. But what we were also lucky with, and I'll be very honest, we've been able to build this company that way because we also brought on the right people at the right time and gave them responsibility to do things the way they wanted to do it. Like neither of us was CEO. Pooja came on to be our CEO because she knew how to run a business. And she really helped build our agency business. If you look at our creative directors, look at our business leads today, they all came in at a time when we had a need. They almost took ownership like this is their own company and helped build it. So I think you need to bring people and give them ownership. We never wanted it to be, oh, this is a proprietor run business. Like, oh, this is the founders are running everything. The founders should never run everything, because the founders at some point will also like get tired,
Yes.
won't have as much energy. But today, if I look at the energy of the people who run a large part of our verticals, they're really building it like it's their own business. They have so much ownership. And that's how we've been able to grow it. We've been able to grow by saying somebody sees an opportunity. Our job is to give them solutions to help them do their job and honestly take away the headaches from their lives. So anybody say, I don't want to do this, either you take it on yourself or you find somebody else who can do it within your team. That's what our job has been. Just make sure people are fine, to make sure that things are running, and also look ahead to see what can come tomorrow. I think that's also what we don't do, is that you need to focus on the present. It's very important, but it's one person who's spending a little bit of time looking at where the future is going. And I think that combination is what's been good for us. I think, but also we started at the right time. I think we were just there at the right time, and we had the right. We were not over planned, we were under planned, but I think we just knew how to adapt better.
Talking about the team, like you said, like we brought in people at the right time who take ownership and work as. So in cases, in some of the cases with me, when we work on a project, we bring in some person, and that person really does well, and he takes the ownership like no other person in the company. He's representing the brand all the time. But when he gets to know like what is the kind of revenue we are making, so he asks for a stake. Okay, so what is this for me? I'm going to stick around. So what are you going to give to me? Am I the CMO, or am I the head of something? Or what is the stake for me? So how did you come across such challenges in your company, and how do you counter them? I mean, how do you handle them?
So you'll get a lot of that. We've had that in the past as well, and I think that's important. So the thing is, you need to look at it, turn around and say a few things, right? I think there are two learnings here. One is that nobody who's an employee will ever have as much ownership as the people who have stakeholders, because you have a lot more skin in the game. You want to share of the company, which means you stand to gain a lot more. So you can't put the pressure of the leadership who are shareholding on employees. But I think secondly, if somebody says, I want skin in the game, I don't think the only way to do that is to give them equity. I don't think everybody wants equity. I feel people want to be rewarded for the work they do. So it's about finding structures that make sure that they feel they're getting compensated right. It's a struggle. I'll be honest. I don't have a solution to this. We've taken it case by case. In some cases, it's worked out. In some cases, it's not, where this person's left and moved on to other things. But you need to do what you can by balancing two things. It should make sense for the person, but it should also make sense for the company. Sometimes bending, to what a person requires, if that's going to be detrimental to the business, you shouldn't do it. Sometimes just stretching the rules a little bit for one person, because it won't affect, but it'll in the long term be better for the business. You should do it. So it's just finding that balance. There's no right or wrong answer. In most cases, it's a choice that you make, but make that choice with this mindset. Saying, does it balance it out? Does it make sense for the business in the long term and for the person? I oftentimes, when somebody wants to quit, have always sat down and said, okay, what do you want to do? And I've, for instance, sometimes advised someone saying, okay, don't quit and go there because you will not be happy. In some cases, I've said, quit and go now. Like, this makes sense, right? We'll never be able to give you the kind of value that company or that profession might. Like, I've had people who quit the field and gone on to do things like someone's gone on to become an interior designer, someone's become a musician, and they've done really well. What we've always told them, if someone we valued as people, is saying, go try that out. And if it doesn't work out in 6 months, call us up. We'll figure a way to get you back in. And I think that's important to say. Use people a little bit. And also, people value you better. And if they go, it doesn't mean they can't come back. We have this saying at Glitz that we've had people who are like batches. So we have people who come back twice, come back thrice. So you work for some time, you go somewhere else, you still come back when you see an opportunity to come back. So that's happened many times to us. So I think don't look at it as an absolute, but gauge the situation and balance what the business needs and what the person needs.
And sir, to end up this, I will not take you much time. This is the last question. I will not bore you up. So for the last, I want audience control over the creator. Let's suppose you have people in the initial, there were some YouTube channels who were just producing content, and then the audience will come to the show and like epic rap battles or anything. They'll come and like, can you do Einstein versus this person? Can you do this person versus this person? So, and they really used to consider and take that up, and next episode was built on what the audience have asked for.
Yeah.
This change, audience control over the content creation. So, what do you think? How this is going to shape the future of content creation?
Are you saying that has the audience got more control now or less control? What do you say?
I think it's more control.
So
That's my perspective.
So there are two ways to look at it. I think a creator today has the option of deciding how much control they want to give their audience, and how much they don't. Again, depends on the goals they've set for themselves. If your goal is to get a largest possible audience, then you will have to listen to your audience a lot. And also understanding data. And I feel that you can have your cake and eat it too in scaling, because in many ways, if you track audience patterns and look at that data, you can still continue to create the kind of content you want to. You might just have to tweak how you do it a little bit to kind of see how that works better for an audience. But you shouldn't only create things which the audience wants. I think a core fundamental thing about a creative, because you're creating consistently, is that you have to create something that you want to create. And that's the base. That's the only way you can do this in the long term, is if you actually enjoy doing it. Otherwise, it will show in the quality of the content. So actually start with what you love. I always say this, like, start with what you love, make that the base of what you do. Make that the base of what you're creating. And then from that point onwards, understand your audience and map it to them. Like, find the audience for what you love to talk about or what you love to create, and then tweak it basis what their consumption patterns are, etc. So balance it that way. The essence still has to be what you really want to do. If you're doing it as a creator, if you're a media network, that's a whole different problem, right? If you're like a company, etc. The other part of the audience aspect is simply this: is that the audience also changes as the platforms change, as the world around us changes. The audiences also change. There wasn't as big, for instance, the podcast audience as there has been in the last 2 years, right? People started listening to a lot more podcasts through the lockdowns, etc. And those numbers have gone up and down as well, right? As things opened up, sometimes people listen less. When things are locked in, people listen more as well. So some patterns you can't control. What you can control is the fact that what you genuinely enjoy creating, understanding patterns from the audience, and understanding the audience through data, but also through messages. Like, the reason why I interact a lot with anybody who messages me with a relevant question or a point is because I learn something from my audience. I don't just, but the end deciding factor is still me. I'm deciding to take someone's point of view or not, but keep interacting. Interactions really help in learning more.
Sorry to interrupt, but sir, do you think creators have a good understanding of data and how to map it to content creation?
100%. What I actually tell anybody who wants to work in an agency today is that you need to understand how platforms work, and the only way you can understand how a platform works is to be a creator. And to be a creator doesn't mean you suddenly make videos and do everything else, right? You can be someone who's just writing or just like doing anything. Like I know enough creators on Instagram who just literally typing something out on a notes app and taking screenshots and making that their content. But the dashboard is something which you learn so much from. The deeper you go into that, you learn so much about how to look at metrics, how to look at analytics and all that stuff. So yeah, if all creators today understand data so well, and anybody who's a young person today who has grown up with these platforms available to them, walk into jobs with an understanding of data analytics more than most people who are, let's say, in their 40s are today.
And sir, this question: you have data and you have the content creators. Let's suppose their identity. You are known for talks on advertising, marketing, and content creation, and then you have your audience. So how you in the intersection of all these three things? So how you define something is going to be viral or not? So what's your definition of viral in the context of these three?
I actually, I've always been wary of the term viral. I feel that you create the best possible content you can create, keeping all parameters of your understanding of your audience data, the quality of the content you create, and you put it out there, and it becomes viral if people actually enjoy it. But I don't think you can. There's no hacking to making something viral. I don't think that's the thing. You don't make something that is viral, it becomes viral. Like, and that goes for everything, right? Like, if you speak to some of the best authors in the world, like Malcolm Gladwell, some of the world's most well-known authors, right? Malcolm Gladwell's first book started to sell well 2 years after its release, right? So sometimes you will have, like, I was watching a video which said there are YouTubers who have stopped creating content in the last 2-3 years, but their old content, like from 5 years ago, is still getting views, so they're still making money. So in some cases, you don't know when it's going to start going around, when something will become relevant. If you're consistently creating, and you're creating through a focus of quality and understanding the audience, over time, some things will go viral, and the things which will go viral will be the most unexpected ones. Like people will make the most creators actually say this is that they'll spend a lot of time on creating a piece of content, and that might not do well. They'll do a random, put a camera on, talk to the mic, and put it out there, and that will suddenly get like 1 million views. So just focus on the fundamentals, and I think consistency and fundamentals will really get you to a decent number. But is there a way to get like one video to become? I don't. I've always found that to be. I look at it more as a sum of many parts and not just one thing doing really well.
That is interesting, sir. Because most of the people whom I ask, they tend to say this most cliche thing like consistency is the key. But I have tried to produce content, but it's not getting traction. So I was like, I have this understanding of what to do, but I don't know. I don't understand data and I don't understand platforms. So
consistency is not the key, right? Consistency is one part of it, but you need to learn with. So it's like everyone says, no, learn from your failure, like learn from your failures. But what we don't say is that if every failure teaches you something, which means the next thing you do has been tweaked a little bit with that failure. So I mean, if something doesn't get the numbers, you look at the data and go, where did people drop off? Where did something go off? Let me change that part of it, and you keep experimenting. And at some point in that experiment, you will see why something works and why it doesn't work.
Glad to have you, sir. That's a good perspective. So glad to have you on the show, sir. Thanks a lot for coming here and taking your time. And sir, at last, like, you have any talk about the show? How was it? Like the questions I have asked, and how was the interaction? Did I go?
You had a lot of interesting, diverse questions there. I think you were a little nervous. It shows sometimes in the way you're asking, but that's the only thing I would say is that no matter who the guest is, the way you should use that, even if you're feeling a little nervous, is to go slower. Sometimes you tend to go fast. I have a problem. I go fast. I speak very quickly. So I understand it. So when you feel a little nervous, try to go slower, then go faster. It takes a little training in your head. That's the only thing I would ask you to change, is that whenever I saw that you were trying to put a point across, you were going a little faster, go a little slower. That makes you feel a little easy as well.
Yes.
And it makes the conversation a lot smoother. But other than that, like, I like the diversity of the questions you asked.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming to the show. This means a lot to me because you've been a kind of ideal for me, the father of podcasting. We can say that. I mean, for me, you are like, if someone asks who's the father of podcasting, I can say that Varun Duggirala. Thanks a lot for coming to the show. This has been a privilege.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, sir.